All right, hello everyone. All right, this this lecture we're going to talk about problem identification, or what's referred to as problem analysis. This gets in many ways at the heart of public policy analysis, what it's all about, and half of it is about analyzing problems, analyzing public problems. It could be economic problems, social problems, but there are problems that are seen as in the broader interest of society that government needs to intervene to try to alleviate or solve these situations. So there's a sense that there is a systematic way that we can go about it. We just don't come to the table and shoot by our hip, so to speak, and go by our intuition and try to explain these problems, but we approach them systematically. In problem analysis, there's a cross with research methods. I believe you've taken a class on research methods, on scientific research methods, and there's clearly a parallel here. This way of thinking that there is a certain methodology about how we go about understanding knowledge, generating knowledge. Excuse me. So in the field of policy analysis, this is an important thing. Problem identification is the most important step in the overall policy analysis process. The overall policy analysis process includes the analysis of alternatives or solutions. So you have, on the one hand, the first part, identifying a problem and analyzing it so we understand it sufficiently. And then the next part is trying to come up with possible policy solutions. So the problem identification or analysis step really provides the framework. You got to get this step right. You have to have a sufficient, clear understanding of the problem if you want to hope to come up with some reasonable policy solutions. So this is the paper that you're going to be writing, the first paper you'll be writing for this class. This is the outline here. This is from the syllabus, and this is the outline I would like you to use in writing this first paper, and this is due in a few weeks. I'll come back to this outline and talk about it a little bit more. Let me move on, and I have about 4 bullet points here that serve as outline for the paper, how I would like you to approach it. The first thing here is to be sure to define the problem early, succinctly, and clearly. Don't spend a lot of time with a long, flowery introduction. Just really get to the point and try to state the problem. This is harder than it sounds. For example, if the particular public problem you're writing about is, say, immigration, well, you want to be clear right away. Are you talking about illegal immigration or legal immigration or both? And there's a big difference in how you approach that. Are you talking about immigrants with particular skills from particular countries, particular types of immigrants? In other words, some immigrants are fleeing countries, are fleeing political persecution in countries where there are a lot of political problems. So you want to be very clear kind of right up front. Now I've also included here, in addition to defining the problem clearly, succinctly, and early, where does the problem exist? And what I mean here is there is a parallel, an important one, between the geographic location of the problem you're looking at and the political institutions, the policy capacity for solving that problem. So on a simple example, if the problem we're talking about is illegal immigrants in the city of Los Angeles. That's different than saying the problem we're identifying is illegal immigrants in the United States. Now, you can do it either way. If you were interested in this kind of topic, you could define it at city level. You could actually define it at a county level, the state level. You could go broader, or the national level. But it's going to make a big difference when you get to thinking about policy capacity, those political institutions that have the authority to enact policies which can potentially solve the problem. Now, clearly, you're going to be much more limited on a local scale than you would be at a national scale in many cases. Take the issue of illegal immigration. There, depending on how you look at the problem, and that's another thing, that's a big political topic. The resources that you have access to at the local level are much more limited, and the legal actions you can take at the local level are much more limited than you can at the national level. So just bear that in mind, no matter what particular public problem you're looking at. What is this link between the geographic scale and policy capacity? Oops. Now, the second bullet point I have here, prove that the problem you're going to analyze is truly a problem. Prove that the problem you're going to analyze is truly a problem. Now, that sounds pretty straightforward, but oftentimes we can get into a habit, or we can maybe be just lose sight of the fact that others may not kind of know, have the same knowledge of the problem that you do. So you can never assume that your client knows about the particular problem that you're writing about. So for example, let's take the problem, say, homelessness. Now, on some level, we all know that homelessness is a problem, is a public problem, but you don't want to assume that your client knows that and knows much about the homeless problem situation. Now, in this class, I guess I'm your client. I'll be reading the paper, and I may or may not be familiar with the particular problem you're looking at. But regardless, don't assume that I know much about it. So you want to really lay it out for me and prove and show, demonstrate that it really is a problem. And this is true in the real world. If you're doing analysis for your client, that might be your boss somewhere in some agency, or at another higher level, maybe you're doing analysis for a city council person or a legislator or the governor or what have you. Never assume that they know really what's going on. So some things to think about here. How long has the problem existed? Is it a recent problem? Is it a problem that has been around a while? Is it a problem that's been around a while but has kind of goes up and down? That might be true of homelessness. There's always been homelessness, but maybe the homeless population or a subset of the homeless population has increased in the last few years. So lay that out with some numbers, some estimates by some credible sources. What is the magnitude of the problem? And again, this is getting some numbers. How many homeless are there? If you're writing about climate change, how bad is climate change? What are the estimates? What are the estimates of carbon emissions? That sort of thing. Describe the characteristics of the population. A good example here would be the homeless. If you're writing about the homeless problem, well, who are the people who are homeless out there? Are they children? Are they working people? Are they mentally ill? Are they people who have recently experienced unemployment, women, men, minority groups, and so on. So describe the population. The third bullet point I have here is identify and discuss the causes of the problem. So causes. Now, if you recall from your research methods class, you probably came across at some point this notion of causal analysis, that all problems have causes, whether we're talking about problems in chemistry, problems in physics, problems in sociology and political science. All problems have causes. And this is really an essential part of problem analysis, is thinking about the causes of the problem. This is probably more important than anything else. What are the causes of the problem? And there'll be an important link here between the causes that you identify and the policy solutions that you'll be drawn towards. I just drew out here some possible causal patterns in looking at a particular problem. And I encourage you to do this as an exercise to help stimulate your thinking about the potential causes of a particular problem. So, for example, take here why. Why is the particular problem you're looking at? And let's say, in this case, it's homelessness. Why is the problem? And you want to think about the causes. And you're thinking about what I have here, x of 1, x2, x of n, and so on. Those may be the causes. And if we sat down and brainstormed, we could think of a number of causes of homelessness. For example, mental illness, unemployment, drug abuse, alcoholism, lack of skills, and a whole host of other things. And so we want to link these causes to the problem in this kind of diagram. The arrows might look different depending on how you view the causes of a particular problem. So on the top here, we might refer to this as something like simultaneous causation, that all of these causes are interacting together simultaneously to result in homelessness. There might be something like this diagram on the bottom, which we might refer to as sequential causation, where one thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to homelessness. So, for example, maybe alcoholism, x of 1, leads to unemployment because you lose your job, you don't show up on time, and that leads to depression, and then that leads to homelessness. So you get the picture here. Now the arrows can be written in a number of different ways, again, depending on how you view the problem. Oops. Oh, sorry about that. Now, an important point to bear in mind with respect to causation is that it is inherently political. In other words, causation is not necessarily objective. In other words, when we look at the causes of a particular problem, the particular causes that we will identify and how we interpret and understand and think about those causes will be influenced by our values and our politics. And that's okay. That's normal. That's the reality. Here's a great quote by Deborah Stone, who has written extensively in the field of policy analysis. She says, quote, "No two observers are likely even to see the partial picture in exactly the same way. This divergence is what underpins the political struggle over problem definition, with causal understandings inevitably predisposing certain kinds of policy solutions, foreclosing others, and directing the allocation of authority and resources to cope with a problem." So just a very nice quote there to underscore the political nature of of causation. Okay. And then I want you to think about root causes and proximate causes. And this is an important analytical tool to think about and to help you with your problem analysis paper and ultimately the kinds of policy solutions that you will be drawn to and recommend. Now, there's no rule here about whether or not I want you to have, you don't necessarily have to have root causes and proximate causes. I don't want you to make too big of an issue of this. In other words, I don't want you to get confused by these two terms, root and proximate, and be worried that you're supposed to have root or proximate causes. These are relative kinds of terms here. The root cause, and when we talk about root, we're talking about kind of what the word infers, the root, the very foundation. What is the major cause, the ultimate cause of a particular problem? Proximate causes are causes which, maybe if we got rid of those causes, the problem would probably still exist. It's not the main cause, but they're more proximate. So you can probably get to this by way of example. If we think about homelessness, for example, and if we argue that the root cause of homelessness is that we live in a capitalist economy that makes people vulnerable to being homeless. Now, if that's the cause, that's one of the causes that we are arguing is underlying homelessness, clearly in terms of policy, there's not a lot, it doesn't leave us a lot of options. We can try to make structural changes in our economic system, radical political changes and political policies to maybe buffer the ill effects of capitalism for the homeless. But it really creates a challenge for us, because what do you do about the root cause? It's kind of unlikely that the ultimate solution is going to be found or implemented. Now, a proximate cause of homelessness may be that some of the homeless don't have the right kind of skills for our new economy. And if they had certain skills, they could get a job and pull themselves out of their homeless situation. Now here, again, think of the meaning of the word proximate. Here is something that we could realistically maybe do something about to alleviate the problem by providing some kind of job training for this segment of the homeless population. So the proximate causes are those causes of the problem that we can realistically maybe do something about. And these are just important, again, to think about. You may want to consider proximate causes so you will have, when you get to your policy alternatives, you can think about some practical kinds of solutions. Okay, I'm going to end here, and I'll pick it up again from here in the second lecture. This will be part 1 of the problem identification.